Dear students, I welcome all of you to this class. As you know, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the entire world has gone into crisis, great crisis. And because of that crisis of relations and disease and problems, today all the intellectual activities have gone digital. So, as part of this teaching program for the year 2020, third semester, so we have prepared some of the YouTube programs, and as you know, this lecture is to be a YouTube program, and the topic of this lecture is Aristotle's Poetics. That is the first part of section 1, 3.2, that's a criticism paper part first, third semester. So, I hope you will follow me, and this lecture is about Aristotle's Poetics. In 1.5 to 2 hours lecture, I am covering Mr. Aristotle's Poetics in its completeness and all seriousness. You know that Aristotle was a major Greek philosopher and scientist. His name in Greek means the best purpose. He is still the world's greatest scientist, philosopher and teacher. He was born at Stagira in Chalcis of Macedonia, northern Greece near Aegean Sea. His father, Nicomachus, was a physician to King Amanthus II at Pella, the capital of Macedonia then. Secondly, Aristotle was Plato's disciple at his academy in Athens for more than a decade, and he remained in Athens for 20 years. And this made him study ethics, aesthetics, and Greek philosophy besides his favorite subjects. I use the word favorite subjects because he studied science subjects like physics, biology, zoology, metaphysics, logic, ethics, aesthetics, poetry, theatre, music, rhetoric, linguistics, economics, politics, and government. So, he was a builder of system. He was a great man of encyclopedic knowledge and a builder of a great theoretical system, also practical system as a scientist. He contributed to all these subjects. He left Athens after Plato died, and his nephew Speusippus succeeded his school. Aristotle had a special interest in botany and zoology. He was a tutor to Alexander the Great and to the kings of Ptolemy and Cassander. Aristotle suggested Alexander to go on a conquest of India. It's very interesting. So, Alexander helped Aristotle develop a museum and a great library. Aristotle had a great library, which concept the Egyptian kings used for assembling their libraries in Egypt. And Aristotle wrote hundreds of books on papyrus scrolls. That was a practice in those days. Plato and Aristotle had differences of opinion in their interests. If Plato had an interest in mathematics, Aristotle had an interest in science. That's the reason. Aristotle stayed in Mysia in Asia Minor and married a beautiful lady called Pythias. He had a daughter by the same name, Pythias. After his wife's death, Aristotle had another wife, Herpales of Stagira, and he had a son by the name Nicomachus. Nicomachus was the name of his father also. Then Aristotle moved to Lesbos, where he worked with the philosopher Theophrastus, the successor of Aristotle's estate. In fact, he was his nephew. Aristotle established Lyceum, a kind of school. What kind of school? Peripatetic tradition. His best followers, students, were there. Aristotle settled as a teacher of Lysias Lyceum in Athens from 335 BC. He used to give public lectures. Alexander died in 323 BC, and the Athenians asked the Macedonian scholar Aristotle to leave the city because there was anti-Macedonian interests. So, as they asked Socrates to die by drinking hemlock poison, they wanted to finish Aristotle. So, they asked him to leave the their country, Athens, because he was of northern Greece, Macedonia. So he stayed in yet another town called Chalcis, and after a year of Alexander's death, he died in 322 BC. You know that Alexander died in 323 in Arabia while he was returning from his invasion of the East, particularly India. Aristotle's student Antipater buried him next to his wife. We know little about Aristotle's personality except that he was a tall, brilliant, witty and humorous personality. Aristotle is said to have written 400 books, of which only 50 survive. We divide his scholarship into 3 divisions. Works of popular nature, no works survives. Works of research, only one book survives, that is the Constitution of Athens. 3. Aristotle's notes, 50 of these notes like rhetorics and poetics and ethics survive. Aristotle's notes can be divided into 5 groups, namely logic, 2 books, categories and analytics, second category physics and metaphysics, the third category biology and psychology, the fourth category ethics, the fifth category rhetorics and poetics. This last category you should know called rhetorics and poetics falls under the category, one of the 3 categories of knowledge categorized by him. It is called productive knowledge. What is the use of listening to lectures? What is the use of watching a drama, tragedy? It is important, essential, because it forms our character and personality. It is called therefore productive knowledge, productive science. Rhetorics and poetics provide Aristotle's aesthetic theories or his examination of productive imagination. Art supplements nature and imitates it by representation. So he talks of imitation. What is imitation? It is nothing but representation. Man by artistic creation fulfills a natural desire and participates in the universal. This enriches his life and community life also. Aristotle's poetics speaks of tragedy, comedy and epic. We can see his theory of imitation and many artistic principles in this book. Art originates in man's desire to imitate and to represent the world around him. Alongside Plato, Aristotle is the great founding figure of Western philosophy and literary theories, and that is very important. So, these 2 people built the systems. Here, poetry means literature. Epic and tragic composition, Aristotle writes, epic and tragic composition and indeed comedy, dithyrambic composition and most sorts of music for wind and stringed instruments are all considered as a whole representations. We have music, we have sculpture, we have literature or poetry or drama and other such categories, and music and dance. These are all imitations, imitations of nature. In other words, they are also called representations. These representations differ from one another in 3 ways by using for the representation. Number 1, media, different media. Music is different, poetry is different, drama is different, and again sculpture is different because they use different media or medium. Number 2, different objects. The objective of a tragedy is different, the objective of a comedy is different. Again, the objective of a epic poem is different. So, the objectives means objects of each of these arts, fine arts are different. The third thing is manner. The manner also differs. For example, in a tragedy, in comedy, you use dialogues. In epic poem, you never use dialogue. What do you use, boys? You use narrative, narration. Simply you describe the story of the Ramayana, of the Mahabharata, of Iliad, of Odyssey, of Gilgamesh. So, in regard to medium or media, some people use colors, some people use sound. So, arts are represent characters, suffering and action by using rhythm as in dance, speech as in drama and melody as in music, they use them separately or mixed. There is verse also or poetry also. Poets use verse. Even people can write a medical treatise in verse form, and that is not poetry. Drama can use all media. In drama, you find dance, you find songs, you find verse narration also. So drama has a composition of all the three things. Object, I told you, in drama there are two important categories, tragedy and comedy. Both are different. Why? Because they represent different objects. Aristotle writes, since those who represent people in action, these people are necessarily either good or bad, good or inferior. For characters almost always follow from these qualities alone. Everyone differs in character because of goodness and evil. So they differ either, so they are either better than we are, or worse than we are, or such as we are in real life. Just as the painters represent them, for Polygotonus used to make images of superior persons, Passion of worse ones, and Dionysius of these just like us. So there are superior people as in a tragedy, there are inferior people as in a comedy, and there are people as we are in sometimes a tragedy, sometimes epic poetry. One may represent people in various ways. Homer represented them in better ways. Therefore, you love to read Homer. Tragedy too is distinguished from comedy by precisely this difference. Comedy prefers to represent people who are worse than those who exist. Tragedy represents people who are superior. The third criteria is manner. What kind of manner you use in different arts? Again, a third difference among these kinds is the manner in which one can represent each of these things. For one can use the same media to represent the very same things, sometimes by narrating. Where do you narrate the story? In novel, for example, in epic, for example. By becoming another person, it is in drama, and as Homer does, and remaining the same person and not changing. In history, for example, historical characters are real characters, by representing everyone as in action and activity. So representation then has these 3 points of differences, as we said at the beginning. In media or medium, number 1 medium, number 2 objects, number 3 manner. Because of these three means representation of music, of poetry, of drama, of sculpture are each different. Consequently, in one respect, Sophocles is the same sort of representation artist as Homer, in that both represent good people. You know, Sophocles is a tragedies like Oedipus, but in another he is like Aristophanes. Aristophanes wrote comedies, since both represent them in action and doing things. Some works are called dramas because of this. Dorians said they invented both tragedy and comedy. In Greece, there is a place called Doria, an island. Epicharmus, Sionidas, and Magnes were the early comic poets who wandered in villages making shows, like Hucheshwar Natya Sangha, going from one village to another village, putting their comedies on show. We write poetry or literature for 2 reasons. Aristotle discusses why you write poetry, why you compose a drama, why Homer wrote Iliad and other epic poem. So it is called representation. Representation or imitation is natural to human beings. All beings, all animals have imitation power, even animals. Man learns through representation or imitation. Aristotle thinks to experience or to observe is to learn the things of the world. Number 2, man delights in representation. You see the rainbow in the sky and write it on a piece of white paper with pencil and color. Your father, your mother will be very happy because it is a very good representation in color. That is a painting. So man delights in representation. People learn as they observe and infer what each thing is. Grander people represent fine actions and persons, Homer represented better persons because he was a great learned man. Poorer ones represent poorer things called invectives or lampoons or laughable. It is nothing but a comedy. In comedy, what you see? Ugly things, dwarfing things, clowns, jokers. They are all inferior things. Aristotle thinks tragedy and comedy are better things than epic and lampoon. Tragedy arose from the leaders of Dithyramb. There was a kind of folklore in ancient Greek islands called Dithyramb, and it no longer exists. And there was comedy that arose from the leaders of phallic processions. You might have heard in India, in this Dharwad area also, a kind of folklore called Jokumara Habba. It's a kind of a scene for comedy. Both grew little by little. Aeschylus increased the actors of tragedy from one character to two characters. He reduced the chorus songs and made speech very important. What is Sophocles' contribution to the growth of tragedy? Sophocles brought in three characters and scenery in the drama. Tragedy changed its verse form from tetrameter to iambic verse. Earlier, tragedy writers used the meter called tetrameter, 4 feet in one line. Later, these two, Aeschylus and Sophocles, used only iambs instead of tetrameter in lines. Iambic is suited to speech because Sophocles introduced speech. Earlier it was a narration. You might have heard of poetic drama, symbolic drama of Eliot and Yeats. There is a poetry. Modern dramas do not use poetry or narration, they use prose as a medium. Comedy is a representation of people who are other inferior. I told you twice. Comedy has aspects of ugliness and error, and that is not painful. For example, the characters wear masks. In 17th, 18th century British drama, their characters used masks. One form of comedy was called masks. Comedy is not taken seriously. Comedy developed progs and a number of actors. Epicharmus and Phormys introduced a plot. Comedy was developed in Sicily and Athens. It is said that Aristotle's Poetics was in two parts. The first part is now available. Students, you need to understand. This is about tragedy and little about epic poetry. The second part was said to be only about comedy, but the second part which Aristotle wrote is missing, lost. Then he highlights about epic as a genre of literature. He writes, epic poetry follows tragedy insofar as it is a representation of serious people, which uses a speech in verse, but they differ in that epic has a single verse form and is narrative. What is the difference between tragedy and drama and epic poetry? Drama uses speech or dialogue. Epic poetry doesn't. In drama, you have songs. In epic, there are no songs. Drama, when you stage it in a Rangayana, people come and sit before you, called audience. In epic poetry, no. You simply take this great epic poem and read it at home. This is Ramayana. There is a difference between tragedy or drama and that of epic poetry. So, you need to read these books. See, this is Aristotle's Poetics by me. Isn't it? It is by me. And here are two very important critical commendations. One is Aristotle's Poetics and English Literature by Elder Olson. Very good book. And very cheap and most available book is Jonathan Barnes. It's called Aristotle, a very short introduction by Oxford University publication. Wonderful book. Just 100 rupees priced. So, this is how you find his important critical theories about tragedy and epic poem. In continuation, again with respect to length, tragedy attempts as far as possible to keep within one revolution of the sun. There are actions in tragedy. These actions are taken only for one day. You see any tragedy, for example, Oedipus by Sophocles, Hamlet, Macbeth, Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare, Saint John by George Bernard Shaw. Actions. How many days action is there? 1 day. Action is there usually. You take the examples of great epic poems. Ramayana, how many years story? Mahabharata, 10 years story. Iliad, 10 years story. Odyssey, 20 years story. No limitations on length in epic poetry. So, as for their parts, some are the same, other parts are particular to tragedy. For example, in tragedy you have song, you have spectacle, means audience. For this reason, whoever knows about good and inferior tragedies knows about epics. Tragedy possesses all the parts of the epic. Very important statement. Tragedy possesses all the parts of epic has, but those that it possesses are not there in epic. The last line of that particular argument. Now I elaborate you about tragedy. Aristotle's Poetics is mainly about tragedy. What is tragedy? You should know the definition. He defines. Tragedy is a representation of, it is a representation. All arts are representation. Okay, accepted. Tragedy is a representation of a serious action. It's a representation of serious, complete action, which has magnitude. You see the tragedy of Julius Caesar, there is magnitude. All people will be very sorrowing, shedding tears at the death of assassination of Julius Caesar on the stage. Its magnitude. In how is the language? Embellished speech, beautiful speech, with each of its elements used separately in the various parts of the play, represented by people acting. It is a stage, people are acting, dialogues are there, action is there. Acting and not by narration, accomplishing by means of pity and terror the catharsis of such emotions. You see the tragedy of Julius Caesar. Brutus has just killed Julius Caesar by stabbing, and now there comes a man called, a general called Antony, Mark Antony. He comes, he addresses the gathering in the streets. See, great Brutus. He appreciates Brutus first. He has killed great general Julius Caesar. You Romans friends, please come, see the tragedy. He makes a speech. What happens? All people come, listen to Antony's speech, Mark Antony's speech, very famous speech, and they support him. And finally, all these Roman people in the leadership, under the leadership of Julius Caesar's son-in-law, they murder Brutus, and that son-in-law by the name Augustus becomes the emperor of Rome. That's called magnitude. In other words, grandeur. By embellished speech, I mean that which has rhythm and melody. Great language. How is the language? Wonderful Victorian language, classical language. Song, there will be song means music with its elements separately. I mean that some parts of it are accomplished only by means of spoken verses and others again by means of song. There will be song, there will be some kind of speech, verse speech, as you find in Shakespeare's dramas. Since the people acting produce the representation, first the ornament of spectacle will necessarily be a part of tragedy, and then song and diction. For these there are the media in which they produce the representation. By diction I mean the construction of the spoken verses itself. By song I mean that of which the meaning is entirely obvious. What is song, you know. So, what you notice here broadly is the tragedy has 6 characteristic features. The first is plot, very important, because it represents or stands for action. Plot is what? Boys, you know what is plot? It is the skeleton of incidents, actions. Plot is very important. The second thing is character. The third thing is called thought. There is another word called for a thought called reasoning. Reasoning means thought. The fourth characteristic is diction, means language. The fifth is song or music. The last one is audience or spectacle. These are the 6 important characteristic features of tragedy. Okay. Since a tragedy is a representation of an action and is enacted by people acting, These people are necessarily of a certain sort according to their character and their reasoning. For it is because of these that we say that actions are of certain sort, and it is according to people's actions that they succeed or fail. So the plot is the representation of the action. By plot here I mean the construction of incidents. By the characters I mean that according to which we say that the people in action are of certain sort. By reasoning I mean the way in which they use speech to demonstrate something or indeed to make some general statement. Here you remember plot is the first important thing. Plot determines character. Character determines reasoning or thought. These two determine next diction or language. Then diction or language determines music or song, and all these together determine the spectacle. If the entire play is very good, tragedy is very good, people come, otherwise people do not come. So dear students, you need to know these are the 6 characteristic features of tragedy, and also they happen to be in some of them in epic or tragedy or comedy. Tragedy represents action and life. Man's feelings and emotions lie in that action. People are of certain sort according to their characters. Consequently, the incidents, that is plot, are the end of tragedy. Action is the sole force of tragedy, and the end is very important of all. It is said the characters are merely a means of driving the story, and the plot, not characters, is the chief focus of tragedy, as I said. A tragedy cannot exist without action, but without characters it may, he tells. For the tragedies of most recent poets lack in character, and in general there are many such poets. This is possible in painting also. Reversals and recognitions are part of good plot. So plot is the origin and it is the soul of tragedy, and the characters are secondary. Plot is a primary and the characters are secondary. It is very similar in the case of painting also. If someone daubed a surface with the finest pigments indiscriminately, he wouldn't give the same enjoyment as if he had sketched an image in black and white. Like Henry James, Aristotle brings in a comparison between poetry or literature and painting. Tragedy is a representation of an action, and for the sake of the action, above all, a representation of people who are acting. Reasoning comes a third, being able to say what is possible and appropriate. Means the playwright, he puts in his ideologies, communism, capitalism, democracy, whatever, or feminism, or Dalit literature, some theories are there, arguments are there, ideologies are there. All this is subsumed as a reasoning or thought. Diction means language, and song means song or music, and spectacle means drama is said to be a performing arts. You go to any painting, any music and performance department in any university in the world, there will be what? Music and fine arts, or simply fine arts. Drama is one of them, and drama is always backed by what? Theatre, Rangayana. And after 1960s, there came a new medium called film, cinema. So thus, from the page, this page, the action goes to the stage. From the stage, it goes to the scenery, scene, that is film. So drama, then theatre, then cinema productions. These are associated and related arts to one another. Aristotle here speaks at length about plot. Plot is very important, I am telling you again and again. So what is plot? He tells. Aristotle speaks of the structure of plot. Tragedy is the representation of complete action, I said you, serious action, I said you, with certain magnitude, means grandeur. The whole or complete has, whole means what? Complete means what? Serious means what? You know. Whole means that something which has a beginning, a middle and an end. Beginning, middle and end. A good plot should have the beginning, middle and an end. The fineness lies in magnitude and order. Discipline, we talk of discipline and commitment, no, in life. In art also we need to talk about magnitude and order. There should be a good length too, which may be performed against the clock. Tragedy should not be too very vast. It should be at least 3 hours. Doddata, in India, in folklore we had Doddata. How many hours? 8 hours. From 10 o'clock night to 6 o'clock early morning. People had no entertainment then and they would listen. Now we are in modern times, after television, after TV, cinema, etc. and even digital arts, internet, now we have no more time. That's why we want these plays in 3 hours. In fact, most of the cinemas are now less than 3 hours duration. Bridge film, short film, feature film, only 2 hours, 1.5 hours. And documentary are hardly 15 minutes nowadays. It's good thing. So Aristotle speaks of 3 unities. Unity of time means it should be a drama of 1 day against the clock. That is the unity of time. Unity of a place means you have the tragedy about Karna. The tragedy about Karna. The writer of that tragedy of Karna, the great character in the Mahabharata, it is depicted there on the stage. It is performed on the stage. The drama writer doesn't take the entire life of Karna, only a few episodes, because all the life of Karna cannot be shown on the stage in 3 hours or less than 3 hours. So what he does, he takes a few incidents, important incidents that determined his life and death, tragedy. So it will be the unity of action, unity of time, and unity of a place. Today Karna is in Kurukshetra, tomorrow is somewhere else. No, he chooses only one spot, one place, one locale. He doesn't bring in all the locations where he lived during his 70 years life. Only a few nearby are taken, chosen, and they are put in the skeleton. That is called unity of place. So these 3 are called unities. Aristotle's great unities: unity of action, unity of time, unity of place. A plot needs to concern one single person's character's actions. Homer, in composing Odyssey, didn't put into his poem everything that happened to Odysseus. This is the unity of action. This is a single action and a whole one. The unity of place is also there. Literature deals with the universal. History deals with the particular. You read history only once in your lifetime. You do not read that history book next time. But it is a poem, it is a drama, it is cinema. You go to it at least 2 times, 5 times in your lifetime, because they deal with universals. They deal with universals. Literature is superior to history, therefore. The poet's function is to relate not things that have happened, but the things that may happen, that are possible in accordance with the doctrines of probability and necessity. We think that this is possible. It is possible in literature, in tragedy, in epic poetry. History relates the things that have happened, and literature relates the things that may happen. Aristotle tells poetry is more philosophical than history because of this reason. If you see it every year in festivals, it is universal. Everyone likes it. Therefore, it is philosophical. Poetry speaks the universals and history speaks the particulars. The poets use historical names when they write a tragedy and particular names when they write comedy. The reason is that what is possible is believable. The things that have happened are obviously possible. So the poet needs to be a plot constructor. Aristotle writes, among simple plots and actions, episodic tragedies are the worst. When you read a drama or epic poem, there are digressions, means sub-themes, means episodes. You see the television serials nowadays. First the serial maker, producer tells it will be in 50 episodes. Later on interest is created, it becomes popular. What this commercial man does, do you know? He goes on increasing the number of episodes to 200, 300, 400. This is not good. By episodic I mean a plot in which there is neither probability nor necessity that the episodes follow one another. Such tragedies are composed by inferior poets. In those serials which are lengthened for commercial purposes or huge dramas, there won't be unity because of themselves, but by good ones because of the actors. For in composing competition pieces, they extend the plot beyond its potential and are often compelled to distort the sequence. Whatever, where there is a competition or simply we are writing a great work of art, there must be unity, very important. In music it is called bandha. So, bandha should be there. The representation is not only of a complete action, Aristotle said, it is serious action with a certain magnitude, and the incidents are such that after seeing the tragedy, you burst into tears. You see such dramas of Bhakta Kumbhar, and then Satya Harishchandra, for example. Older people, countryside people, after seeing them, they shed tears. Why? Because these great events create pity and terror. We have sympathy for these fallen characters. There are simple plots and complex plots. Simple plots means simple plots, stories. Complex plots means complex stories. Complex stories are very important tragedy. The simple plots based on single action leads to transformation without a reversal or recognition. If the transformation comes by reversal or recognition or by both, that is a complex plot. The transformation should arise from the structure of the plot. Aristotle writes, he writes about what is a complex plot. Sankirnate. It has reversals, it has recognitions, it has a suffering for the character. That is a complex plot. A reversal is a change of the actions to their opposite, as we said, and that as we are arguing, in accordance with probability or necessity. Example, in the Oedipus by Sophocles. The man who comes to bring delight to Oedipus and rid him of his terror about his mother, he does the opposite work there. There comes a Tiresias from the Hades, hell, in order to help the great king Oedipus. But what happens? Instead of helping him, he harms him. That is opposite. That is called reversal. Means going opposite. A happy ending becoming a sad ending for a great king Oedipus. So, and it also happens in the another play called Lycius. In Lycius, he is being led to his death and Danas follows to kill him, but it comes about as a result of the preceding actions that Danas is killed and Lycius is rescued. Recognition means what? There is a thing called recognition. Recognition. How Kunti came to know that Karna was her son in the Mahabharata story? She found some recognition. A recognition, as the word itself indicates, is a change from ignorance to knowledge, and so to either friendship or enmity among people defined in relation to good fortune or misfortune. A recognition is finest when it happens at the same time as a reversal, as does one in Oedipus. There are indeed other kind of recognitions. There can be used more or less well. Odysseus was recognized from his scar in one way or by the nurse and in another by the swineherds. There can be recognition by memory or by inference. The best recognition is from incidents themselves. See what happens in the great Greek epic poem, that's Odyssey. The hero's name is Odysseus. The Romans called him Ulysses. What happened? There was a friend, a king in Greek island, Agamemnon. All of them went to a war in Troy. It's called Trojan War. The king Ulysses was to go back to Greece again from Troy. Troy is in Ankara. Troy is in Turkey today. So they had to go back to Greek island after a 10 years war. they are going. But this great hero, Ulysses, is misled on the way in the seas, high ocean seas, high oceans, because of winds, because of enemies, because of pirates. He takes 10 years in order to reach his island. Once he goes there, it is 20 years. 10 years, he was in the war for 10 years and it took another 10 years to reach his island. And by the time he came back, his enemies were wanting to marry his wife. They were trying to kill his son, prince. And once he went to reach his place, his capital, his palace, his wife was not ready to recognize him. Then how he was accepted as the king of that place? The nurse identified that he was the former king. Later on the wife came to know that he was a former king because he remembered that both wife and husband had planted a tree in the palace. These are recognitions. The third important aspect of a complex plot in a tragedy is suffering. What happens in Raja Satya Harishchandra? You take the simple Indian example, classic Sanskrit drama. In Raja Satya Harishchandra, what happens? Because he was to maintain truth, tell the truth, make people tell the truth or maintain truth. Raja Satya Harishchandra suffered, and finally, because he had given a promise to somebody, he became bankrupt, and finally he went to the graveyard. What was his duty there? To look after the burials. People would come and they would pay a fee, he would allow them to bury their dead bodies. And surprisingly, his own wife came there with the dead body of the son. He didn't allow her to bury that body because she had no money. This is how people suffer. In a tragedy, people suffer. This particular actor Oedipus, in the play Tragedy Oedipus by the author Sophocles, suffers. He becomes such a great man. How he suffers? Because of reversal, recognition and suffering. This great king Oedipus, his father had that child called Oedipus, and soothsayers, diviners came. They told, see king, if you have this child will kill you, they said. And the king and queen were unhappy. They threw away the body of that child into the forest. Some cowboys picked up that child. They gave it to a childless king. That's the irony. And he developed found out child into a prince. And this boy becomes prince. He is called Oedipus. And later on, the street boys tell, see, where is your father? Where is your mother? You tell. You are an orphan boy. They, said him, this hurt the boy and he wanted to find out who was his real father and mother. So one day this heroic character boy goes in search of understanding where is his real father and mother. And there he comes at a crossroad. There actually the great king, Oedipus' father, real father comes there. And there is some quarrel between the two. And this Oedipus kills that man. And later on, actually that man was his father. In ancient Greece there is a place called Delphi. In Delphi people go for what? Understanding their future. Divination, some kind of futurology is there. So he then went to a place and there was a Sphinx statue. It asked a question. He answered that question. Then that Sphinx said, you will become a great king. You will marry your own mother and you will have 2 sons. That kind of a future. He went there and he married a woman. Her husband had died. Actually she was his mother and he had 2 sons. And later on, when the entire state had a famine, great famine for years, the king ordered, why this famine is happening in my state? He asked Tiresias to come. He was a soothsayer. He was coming from Hades, means hell. And Tiresias came. Shall I tell you, king, what is the reason for all this famine? He said, yes, you tell me. It is going to harm you. He said, doesn't matter, the king said. He told, see, you have killed your own father. You have married your own mother. You have begot 2 sons. That is why this is a famine and a great crisis in your state, kingdom. So what is the solution? The king was very unhappy. Oedipus was very unhappy. So he plucked his own two eyes and went to on an exile to some other kingdom. There that king became rich, and this great unfortunate king Oedipus died unknown, unsung, unwept. That's a great tragedy. So there is what? Reversal, recognition and suffering in this complex tragedy of Oedipus. It is also there in Macbeth by Shakespeare, in Saint John by George Bernard Shaw, as you see. Aristotle talks of these 6 characteristic features of tragedy, and then he talks of another 4 parts of tragedy. These 4 parts are prologue, episode, exit and choral part, which are less important and you don't have to bother much. Okay, going about the tragedy must be complex one, creating pity and terror. What kind of tragedy do you want to see? What kind of cinema do you see today? Serials do you see today? Paintings, other things you want to see today? They must be ideal. So first, clearly it shouldn't show, the tragedy shouldn't show decent men undergoing a change from good fortune to misfortune. For this is neither terrifying nor pitiable, but shocking. Nor should it show, the tragedy should not show wicked people passing from misfortune to good fortune. This is most untragic of all, as it has nothing of what it should, for it is neither morally satisfying, nor pitiable, nor terrifying. Now again, the tragedy writer should not show, he should show a thoroughly villainous person falling from good fortune into misfortune. Such a structure can contain moral satisfaction, but not pity or terror, for the former is felt for a person undeserving of his misfortune. What kind of a person should be there? Hero should be there in tragedy. This hero must be intermediate person. He should be such a person is one who neither is superior to us in virtue and justice, nor undergoes a change to misfortune because of vice and wickedness, but he should undergo bad times because of some error. It is called a flaw, means mistake in his character. Why Satya Harishchandra became bankrupt? Did he do any wicked thing? No. Why? Because of small mistake. What was a small mistake? He always kept to his promises. That made him go bankrupt and suffer in life. So Oedipus is such a hero, Hamlet is such a hero, Macbeth is such a hero. The finest tragedies are constructed around a few households. For example, about Oedipus, Orestes, Meleager, Thistes, Telephus and others. Euripides' tragedies are of this sort. If an enemy is pitted against enemy, it cannot be a good tragedy. A brother must be pitted against a brother, or a son against a father. For example, Orestes killed his mother Clytemnestra. If an enemy kills another enemy, you have no sympathy for him, pity, catharsis. If the son kills his father, there is a problem. If a father kills his son, there is a problem. Here you see, Orestes, the son, kills his own mother